All right, well, welcome to our January demo day. Thank you to everyone for attending. I will get things started. All right, first I'm just going to recap a feature that I think we demoed last time, but it's now in production. So just a reminder, under user settings, there's now an option to influence how the automatic search delay works. So this is the drop down for that. The default behavior is 1.5 seconds. You can change it to one of several values or disable it altogether. As a reminder, that influences how the search fields within point of sale and a few other places within the application work. So if you have the delay enabled, when you type something in, after that delay, it automatically submits your search. We had some feedback that some customers didn't like that, so they wanted an option to disable it. So that's what that setting accounts for. Next, I'll jump in and show some of the inventory inquiry and parts editing functionality. Again, some of this was previewed before, but this is now in production. So from the inventory module, we started out with purchase orders and allowing for receiving against those purchase orders. We now have a parts tab at the top as well. So that will show a listing of parts with certain key details, including on hand, committed, allocated, etc. You can do searches. So if we search for a specific part number, it will return that item. And then you can now click into the detail of those parts, and it will bring up a tabbed interface with both the part.e type items. So the first tab would be the equivalent of a part.e screen in the desktop client, where if you have proper permission, these fields are editable. We could add notes, make any changes to the editable details of that part. Then there are also additional details under inventory. One key change from the desktop client is when we're describing bins for certain locations, we now have the ability to better distinguish between lot control bins and reference bins. So when you're clicking on the bin button, it will be apparent whether that's a reference bin or a lot control bin. So yeah, beyond there, all of the tabs for various commitments, shortages, on orders. We'll click on usage history. So usage history mirrors the charts that are available in the desktop app. You can look at multiple years of history. Didn't pick a great part for history, but then the view data button pops up a little dialog and allows you to display the raw data associated with the chart as well. And then let me click on one other section. So we've also started to add, this is a new sort of function within the application. So now within point of sale, if we go in and we start an order and we get to the parts section and you click on the little inventory level pill that displays various information about the inventory of that item, you can also now click part details, which will open a new tab and take you directly into the inventory inquiry and parts for that particular part. So just a quick way to jump between sections of the application. This is sort of the first instance of that kind of thing happening, but we should be introducing that in more places as it makes sense. All right, so that's a quick recap of inventory inquiry and parts. Any questions before we bounce it over to Alex? Okay, so Alex is going to demo several things, so I'll let him introduce them as he goes. Oh, sorry, Susie, did you have your hand up?
That's okay, I can ask later. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we're going to do be demoing a handful of things, primarily around the point of sale. And I guess, Greg, just a quick check. Did you want me to do the accounting stuff as well, or?
I think Elvin has volunteered for that, so
okay.
You're off the hook.
All right. All right. So we'll start off with point of sale. first we'll kind of gloss over something that's not easily demoable right now. It's currently only supported by certain backend integrations, and Rover is not currently one of them. But we do now have support for sending an SMS text message for orders. So in systems that support this, and if this is turned on, this button will show up and you can click it. And so here we should say, yeah, the text message has not been sent. But if that's supported, that'll be sent out so you can send an SMS message to a customer for the order. Another new little item here is a button here to add a new customer. So previously, if you entered a search for a customer and didn't come up with results, you could get the option to create a new customer. But now we can kind of skip that step and click it right here. So you can create a new customer here. And then that'll get you into the order flow. Okay, I'm just gonna check my notes here. And so a third item, we can actually go back to the order flow here, is we now have a toggle here to automatically add parts on search. And this was to support kind of some changes to how scanning behaves. Originally, when you would scan a part number, if you the scan only yielded one result, it would automatically add to the cart, regardless of whether or not your user setting specified automatically adding parts to a cart. So sometimes people don't want to do that. They just want to like kind of do an inventory lookup or something here. So now scanning does correctly honor this setting, and to help speed things up so you don't have to leave their transaction midway through if you want to toggle the setting, we have a new toggle here. So I can paste in a scan of a part number, and we can see we only got one result, but it did not add to the cart. So I will paste in a different part number now, do a scan, and we can see now it does add to the cart. Actually, and one more thing to show here. We also now have an option, this is controlled via MRK control, to support adding of non-stock parts. And so in order to do this, you can add a part that does not have a part number to your order. In order to do this, you have to open your cart. We have a new option here to add a line item. So you can click this, you can enter part, you can enter a price and pick a quantity. So we can create the order. And now you'll see we've got a new line item on here with that description, that quantity, and that price. So that all flows through. And then
Alex, there's a keyboard shortcut or a couple keyboard shortcuts there to get into the cart too,
yes,
and also add new lines, right?
Yep. Yeah, so from anywhere here on the point of sale, if you want to open up your cart, you can hit Control-C, providing you have hotkeys enabled. I might not. Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know, there's a keyboard shortcuts option here in point of sale section on your user settings. So you got to make sure that's turned on. We can go back.
Is there a document or something listed somewhere that's stating what all the keyboard shortcuts are?
You're writing it, aren't you, Rodney? There actually is help text to that thing, yeah, and this one as well. So it's right there in the app.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, there's two kind of ways here. So here, you can, if you hover over this, it'll say press Control-Shift ? To view shortcuts. And so that's kind of context aware as well. So if you're in point of sale then, and you hit Control-Shift ? You'll get this little thing. So yeah, you can see open cart, we Control-C, add a item. And there's some other options here too. So you can bounce back to the search bar from an input for the quantity of a part with a Shift-F, something like that. So yeah, if you want to open up your cart, you can hit Control-C. If you want to add a line item, you can hit Control-A, and it gets you started right here. So you don't have to leave the keyboard. And then Escape will also close that dialog box.
And then did you want to mention the control switches for SMS mode and maybe the new customer button, right? There's some server side stuff that drives those two, right?
E-
Those are MRK control, or in the case of SMS, it's a special control that's not implemented for Rover because that was a non-Rover integration initially.
Okay, that one's
But the
SMS
add
control.
customer is an MRK control item.
Yeah, I think the Rover equivalent would be SMS control if Rover were to have, backend support for it, but it still follows the same control form pattern, correct?
Correct. That would be the idea.
Yeah. Cool. It looked like Susie and Deborah had questions. Alex, if you want to take those.
Sure.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay,
Perfect.
Susie, you go first.
No, I'm sorry. And then he answered it with the MRK control because I'm like, some places you just don't really want to be adding customers on the fly, like depending on how they're set up. But that answered my question. So I'm assuming the button doesn't show up if they don't have that MRK selected. But thank you.
Correct. That's an opt-in kind of function.
Okay, my question, I have two questions. Where the tabby that says new customer, if I key in a customer that exists, am I going to get that customer to show up and saying it's not a new customer, but do you want this one?
Great question. I don't know. We have a great way to find out. Oh, yeah. So it looks like it will automatically create it, regardless.
Even though it exists.
Yeah, and yeah.
Like
Okay.
created it record by name. So that would be a backend thing for the backend to say, hey, as I'm processing this request, did you mean to suggest this one instead? So that piece is going to be down to last mile, whatever backend we're dealing with, how it's handling that request around that customer. Certainly an opportunity for the backend to say, hey, this name looks to be an exact match or very similar to an existing customer record. Did you mean to use this one instead? The use case here, just to give you a little context, when you turned that flag on, it only presented the option for creating the new customer if you performed a search for a customer that yielded no results. So kind of naturally taking down the path that you're suggesting here. And then what we had was with one of the current Rover implementations, that customer said, hey, we know whether or not the customer exists. So it would be nice to have a shortcut to that button that allowed us to not have to perform the search for the customer to then say, yes, I want to create a new one. So it does create a little potential for them to be typoing customer names that overlap and everything else, unless something were patched on the Rover backend to expand that validation. But it was a great question.
Well, I have one more, so don't hang up there. Okay, Curtis, could you go back to the marketing control screen there? Where it says allow non-stock parts, can I use that in regular Rover, not the web? Because I've got a few customers have asked for that. How do I key in a non-stock part? Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, this toggle specifically only is tied to the web point of sale. I don't know.
So if I
think
were to
the
use
answer
it,
there is in SOE, you're allowed to enter a non-stock item just by default. So
Yeah,
I don't believe there's anything that would disallow that unless that were a mod.
But
well,
if you needed to,
but if that part number doesn't exist, how is it going to?
You just don't enter a part number, and that's what makes it a non-stock part.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Correct.
So then there's additional review before this order would be released and shipped, where that would need to be ordered and filled in.
I didn't know that. Thank you. Yeah, that was good.
And I think that's an interesting question too, because often we're adding these control switches to drive web or API functionality, and there could be a scenario where you say, hey, it would be good to make use of that feature toggle elsewhere in the application. So honestly, if we pretend for a second that SO.E wasn't allowing for that, it would be totally valid to say, hey, I'm going to update the logic for SO.E to take a look at the MRK control setting of this flag and use that as part of the decisioning process. That conversation also quickly dovetails into what Vern and the team have presented and talked about a few times now of changing rovers on the back end, the validation layer to be serving both API calls and desktop forms. So it's the same business logic then getting applied regardless of where the data is coming from. Which is just why that exercise is just so critical, so that we're not maintaining business logic in two different spots. But another great question.
Hey guys, quick question on the non-stock. So staying on that topic for a moment. You know, if a customer has a dashboard, a sales dashboard that lists sales by part, how are those being categorized? Are they just being lumped into one non-stock category?
Yeah, if they're sorting on the line items part number, then yeah, you're dealing with empty fields, so they would all lump into one. Different customers kind of handle this differently from what I've seen at least. So sometimes when they're non-stock, they actually create a part number for that as like a pseudo part. But Butler is an example there, which is kind of nice, clean guidance then, because you can still categorize the part and make it available through some other kind of interface. We've seen that a few times for, again, pseudo parts or things like miscellaneous fees that they want to add to the order. That by defining them as parts in the system, it really allows you to do a lot with it. And then you just don't care about tracking inventory for some of those things.
Yeah.
So it kind of sort of depends. This, allowing for non-stock entry here, which basically, to Greg's point, just means there is no value for the part number. Allowing for that is really just to allow for people who don't want to define that pseudo part to not have to do that.
Yeah, I think the specific use case here is, the customer comes in, wants to order a specific item from a vendor that this Rover instance deals with. They don't want to define all those parts in their parts file, so they look it up in the vendor's catalog, place the PO for it, and the part number never gets populated into the sales order. Jeffrey, you have a question?
Yes, sir. The old adage is the only way to lose money in the distribution business is to not know your cost. When this counter person or whoever is looking it up in the bill book, they see the list price, but they also see the cost, and they would want to enter that cost into the line item as well. Is it possible to add another field for the cost?
So the cost is a field on, I believe, the detail line item field in SOE. At the moment, we weren't intending to expose that on the web, and I believe that field must be populated before the order can be shipped. So this would be part of the back-end process for procuring and actually fulfilling that item, where the cost gets populated here. But at Greg's point, we may want to expose that on the web at some point for certain customers.
And some
But he
customers,
knows, the person.
Hold on. Some customers are already exposing that, right? Because you can contribute however many fields you want into the line item detail as a custom field. So it's basically just that the standard implementation hasn't included it. But if you do need to track costs there, you can do that today without any other touch required on the front end, right? The back end can tell the front end to prompt for it currently. And that's actually in use elsewhere.
Okay.
Cost is actually based on what the inventory cost is carrying. You don't put in a cost, it's a function of what inventory says the cost of the item is.
Yeah, standard inventory definition kind of driving things. I think to Jeff's point, if it's a like ad hoc purchase, like a resale type thing, they may need to enter some other data about that product to carry through without having to define it in the parts file. And that just becomes a perfect use case for what we have in there already for you to add as many custom fields as you want into the line item detail. So whatever you need to be you're prompting your sales rep for, your order writer for, you have the capacity to do that already. One of our Shims customers is a great example there where they have like 20 fields on the line item that are exposed. Standard product has like 4.
Okay, great feedback, everyone. Alex, I think you had one more piece you wanted to show before we hand it over to Elvin.
Yep. So one last piece here. We have 2 different spots where we have these orders tables within point of sale. So here at the main screen and also at the customer screen. So once you've selected a customer. And so these are 2 standard tables. This is what kind of always displays. However, we now have the option to override these with lookups. And so we can update the main screen here in MRK control, and then we can also update the customer screen. So the screen right here. Save this, and then we do need to log back in order for that to take effect. So here we can go back. And so this, you'll notice that there will be some slight changes in the UI display here. So like status and type, we no longer have kind of these, or this fancy pill shape right here. And that's kind of a feature that we want to add. But what this does is that it lets customers actually have more control on what's displayed here, how the search is performed, and some other things. So we could certainly, okay, well, maybe the PO number is not very useful for somebody here, so we could hop over to fdict.e and open up this item and delete that column. So we've got to refetch, we got to refresh the page here probably. And you'll see that the purchase order number is no longer displayed. So that gives a lot more back-end control, and this is used for integrations as well. So if they want to have a non-standard display, they can take total control over what's going on here. And the same in the point of sale orders table, so that there's no longer a needed friction point between us to make sure that we're getting everything all done with additional toggles.
I think you touched on an important point to me, which is that for systems that do opt to start using lookups here, they feel a little bit of loss of clarity, right? And not having descriptions come through for codes unless they send descriptions instead of the codes, right? Backends responding to everything. So it could send something more verbose, but then you still lose out on your nice front end formatting of the thing. So creating a way for them to instruct, yeah, I'm sending this field as closed or what have you, or status is new, and I also want you to apply some kind of formatting to it, becomes an important thing for the backend to be able to do. The other piece of that is the action side of it. Right now, we have to replicate backend business logic into the front end to do things like say, hey, this order is eligible to be shipped, or yes, you can send an email for this order or generate a PDF of it. So simplifying that process to allow the back end just to tell the front end what types of actions should be available for the object is something that's on our radar, so that we don't have to stay down this path of needing to get the right variables from the back end to calculate whether or not the action should be available. That conversation is not really consistent now based off of how many different backends we talk to and how many options are on the table. So the clear way to simplify that is to just let the backend dictate the action instead of having to share the recipe on how to calculate. Susie, did you raise your hand in there too?
I did, but it's more of like the FDIC screen. That is what dictates what fields are actually allowed to display, and you just add or
Correct.
take away. Okay.
Yeah, Alex, do you want to go back to that? Because I sense maybe not everybody's really familiar with the lookup section of FDICT, right? So it's a good opportunity to underline that.
Okay, there. It was a tab. That's cool. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And this same tab is what drives the lookup options that you find in the desktop when you're interacting with so.e, as in this case, as an example, right? So that we're getting nice dual benefit of that code.
Right.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions before we throw it over to Elvin? All right. Thank you, Alex. Elvin, you're up.
All right. Let me share my screen here. See if we can do this. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep, all good.
All right. So we've added a function called for credit hold releases, which is part of the accounting module. So if you click on the accounting module, we now have a KPI that will show us the orders that are on hold with the total order amount. And if we click into the card, we'll get a drop down of the sales orders. And again, this is using the lookup feature that we just talked about. So this is driven by whatever lookups the customer, whatever table they want to see. So the credit hold is going to show who the customer is, what location, how many line items, and their order amount. If we drill down into that customer, we now have the ability to see why they're on credit hold. We can look at the AR. We can see how often they're making payments. We can go to the status. We can just say, okay, what do they have outstanding? So we can make business decisions if we're going to release this order and provide it to the customer. We can also see their receipt history. So how often have they paid? So based off of those decisions, we're also drilling down into the order so they can see what item they purchased, how many line items. And if we say, okay, we want to go ahead and supply this order to the customer, we can hit the release button. We get a drop down code from the ERP stating, we can either approve it, we can continue to put it into a pending status, or we can deny it. If we're going to approve it, in the ERP, we're going to approve it by authority, which will then say release. It's going to pop open our print queue of which printers do we want to print to. We went ahead and said print. It's going to go directly to that warehouse, to that location. And then when we come back to our dashboard, we've released that order and we've gone from 4 orders to 3 orders. And if we didn't want to just drill right into and look at the details for the customer or for that order that's on hold, we can just simply hit the release button from here and release it there as well. And then it's already populated the KPI so that the accounting department can handle their orders that are on credit hold.
I like it. Just you're not supposed to let Robert buy right now, so we can't be approving his orders.
I didn't want to mention anything about the customer or customer names. I wanted to keep that secret.
Yeah. Susie, you have a question?
I'm just full of them today. Then I'm assuming on the back end and the ERP, it tracks the user that released the order.
That's right. So depending on the release code gets written to the sales order file, and we already know the user, their login user, so that name automatically goes into the order. So we know, what time it was released, who released it, and what the release code was, the definition. So all of that is still available in the sales record.
My caveat on that would be the web definitely tells the back end who did it,
Right.
But it's up to the back end to decide how it wants to record that information to things. But as in Elvin's case and in your case here, yes, he's doing something with that information too. Cool.
That looks fabulous.
Nice job,
So,
Elvin.
any other questions on the credit release? Because if not, we added one other feature in the point of sale that if we have a customer up on our screen and we're looking at our invoices, we've added a function that now we can, before we had download, where you can download the invoice and then print it out, you could email the invoice to the end user, but we've added a feature that we can print the invoice directly to the printer. So you don't have to download it and print it locally. You could just send it to the server printers of their, if they're shared out. And what are the real benefits of this for those people that are using duplex, or they have, invoices that have things, they may have some information on the back stating, a bunch of the, how, warranty and things like that. This direct invoice print is a lifesaver now.
To be clear, that's an MRK toggle as well. And we
Yes.
generally wouldn't support the host-based printing on a Rover system,
That's-
but on iMacs, that is a thing we're doing. So,
Right.
All right. I think that's it for Melvin. So, Deborah, you're up. I think Deborah's going to share some of the things she's been doing with AI recently.
Alrighty. This is the image that I'm going to demonstrate how AI will automatically create a document. I'm going to go over to Informer, go to my libraries, and key in the name of the image that I want the AI to document for me. Found the document, I go to the ellipsis, and I click on Ask a Question about this file. It will open up another tabby where I can key in this question, create a detailed document. I would key that right here. Create a detailed document for this image and hit return. So what it's going to do is going to create this information, nice and neat, very pretty. So what you would do once it's completed, you would cut all of this information, take it over to contributing. And contributing, I would key in this question here and then paste in what I cut over here. Hit return, and it's going to create this document, text document, in markdown format. So what then I would do, I would cut this information, take it over to the GitHub, and drop it in here. I'll just show you code and drop it here. And obviously you can add or change or edit the document if you'd like. And you could preview it and see what it looks like before you commit it. Editing it will show the commit so that you can commit. So just remember, when you commit, it's public for this particular site.
Copy pasting stuff, you've noticed there's a little clipboard icon at the bottom, so you don't have to struggle with trying to select and copy the text directly. You can just hit that clipboard thing.
I didn't see that. So
Well, there you go.
So you're saying here. No, actually you're here. Here.
Correct, all the way at the bottom, that little clipboard icon to the left, right by the question mark.
I didn't know that. Yes, very cool.
So there you go. So, and this will get smoother and smoother here too. This functionality is about to go into production with Informer. And so when that happens, we'll update production too, and then we'll be able to ship some of our internal uses away from the dev system that has the preview of this just into production with the rest of the ERP stuff.